I went to Lebanon during the busiest time of year for me, but for a very important reason. I was also able to get a few pics while there. Thank you for joining me in this edition of the Great Outdoors Photography Podcast. Let's hop right in and see what we're talking about. Hey there, welcome back to the Great Outdoors Photography Podcast. I'm your host, Brent Bergherm. This is episode 159 for Wednesday, July 19, 2023. That's right, I actually went to Lebanon in April of 2023, and it is an absolutely gorgeous place. When I was doing a little bit of research after I decided that, yes, I'm going to go, and I'll tell you all the story in a little bit, but I decided, yes, I'm going to go. And there is just so many awesome places to shoot. So I invite you to get on your Google Images search or whatever images search, or maybe you're going to go on to Flickr or 500px or whatever the case is, and just take a look at some Lebanon landscapes and see what you can find for yourself. And I think you'll understand kind of where I'm coming from when I just say it is absolutely gorgeous. All right, so I actually have quite a few things to talk about in this episode. So certainly there's why I went. I'll talk about my itinerary in brief. I will then go through that in a little more detail with the photos that I'm sharing. So you're going to find these photos either on the show notes website. The link is right there in your phone app or wherever you're listening to this. You've got a link there to my website that will show you those photos. Or if you're a member of the Facebook group, of course, you can get those photos there as well. You can take a look at them there as well. I'm going to then go into a deeper dive as to the reason behind my visit. And I want to just kind of lay it all out there. And then I've got some new direction type stuff, so to speak, as far as what I'm doing personally with my photography, with my image making, and with just everything that's going on with photography life, as it were. All right, so why I went. Lebanon, and also in conjunction with the why I went, I want to describe also just a little bit about Lebanon, things that I learned both from being there, but also in doing a lot of research as well. But why I went, I was contacted in, I want to say it was about February, maybe early March, by a university there. And I was invited to consider a position there actually in Lebanon. And I know a lot of you are saying like, say what? That doesn't make any sense. And that was about what I said. I didn't even know this university existed. Now, this university is owned and operated by my church. So we have, as far as, how do I put this? Outside of the Catholic system, as far as for any parochial schools, parochial educational system, that kind of a thing, we are the second largest. We have the second largest health network and the second largest education network for church-based schooling and church-based health networks, hospitals, etc. And so we operate a school literally in Beirut, Lebanon, and I did not know about it until, this is just how unplugged I am sometimes on things. I didn't know about it until they contacted me. And then for them to actually have a graphic design program, I was just shocked and I couldn't believe it. So through some conversations and things, like you do in a normal interview process and whatnot, ultimately I ended up deciding to go visit and to take a look at the place. I just felt like I needed to be there so I could make the best decision possible as it relates to, is this something that makes a lot of sense for our family? Does this work? Does this not work? All that kind of good stuff. So that's the why I went. And again, I will go into a deeper dive into the whole kind of minutia of the thought process and things like that a little bit later in the episode. But I want to focus firstly on the photography side of things. And then those of you who are not as interested in that deeper dive type of stuff, you can fast forward through it, you can skip it, whatever, that's fine. But yeah, I went to look at a job actually. And it's, boy howdy, quite exciting stuff, let me tell you. But let's let me paint a picture for you about Lebanon and just kind of give you just fill you in a little bit about what's happening there. When you look in the news articles and of the brief history, going back 4 years, 5 years, whatever the case is, you're going to find references to an economic crisis that started in 2019. And while that certainly is the case, it really got super bad at the beginning of this year, about January, late January, early February, somewhere in there, this year, 2023. Things got really, really bad. And well, I'm not an economist. And so for me to try and go through the details, the minutia, I know I'm going to screw something up. So let me just tell you about my experience of just being there and what life is like there, boots on the ground type experience. So what happened in that time frame of early February, somewhere in there, was that the currency, the Lebanese pound, it's called the pound or the lira, that is interchangeable. Basically, the terminology for what their money is called is interchangeable. That was effectively devalued about 98%, which is insane. It used to trade at about 1,500 to 1, and now it trades at about 100,000 to 1. So it went from 1,500 to 1 to just shy of 100,000 to 1. And that is just absolutely insane. When I went to exchange money, I handed over $120. And so it was a $100 bill. I think it was a $100 bill I did, and just a 20. And I got back over 10 million lira. And that was a stack, let me tell you. All right, so with their banking crisis, not only their currency crisis, they had a banking crisis going on. And so ever since then as well, all of their banks have just been shut. So to put it into a light that we can possibly understand what's happening for the locals there, what's happening for the people who don't have an outside influence of cash, remittance payments or whatever from family or whatever. Just imagine for yourself all the money that's, you're in your bank account, whether it's just because you get the direct deposit from your employer and you've got a savings account possibly, maybe you've got a retirement account, whatever you've got in the bank, just go ahead and say, poof, it's gone. And you have no more access to that money. It is just not possible. It's gone. And even if you did have it, it's lost 98% of its value anyway. So what's the use, right? All right. So no money. The money is now lost 98 or more percent of its value. And so that means when you go to the grocery store now, and this was my experience, you only have cash available and you go to the grocery store to buy things and your largest bill that you have is a $1 bill. So forget the fact that you have a 5, a 10, a 20, maybe a $50 bill, maybe a $100 bill some of us might use. It's all gone. You just have your coins and you've got your $1 bill. So when you go and buy your groceries for the family, then yeah, it's going to be paying out a lot of bills. And that's the way of life. That's the way it is right now in Lebanon. Now, if you have an outside source of cash, of course, you're good to go because you're going to have some stability. And so the university that I was working at is, they're paying their people in US dollars cash now. And so that just totally makes a lot of sense. And it makes life possible to, make it happen. Boy, howdy. It's such a different situation. It really is just always when I think about it, blows my mind. And when I was relating this to my father, he has been a business manager for many of our secondary schools here in the U.S. Throughout his career. And, making payroll and just paying the bills, whatever else that you got to do. He's just doesn't understand how can you operate without a bank, without a banking system. And I was like, I don't know, Dad. Somehow they've got a cash train coming from the U.S. Otherwise, I just don't know how that works. That's not part of my I just, yeah, I have zero ideas. Well, I guess I had ideas, but zero evidence, zero information. It just wasn't what I was, into. So there it is. There's the kind of the brief viewpoint, the brief idea, the brief picture is painted here for what Lebanon is experiencing right now and what the situation is like, what the opportunities would be to work there. Just incredible. And well, let's get to the photos. Let's get to the itinerary and the photos, and then we'll dive deeper into some of those other things. And like I said too, then this idea of just what I'm doing with my photos and what I do with my life, photography related, those types of things. All right, so the brief itinerary, I flew out of the U.S. here on, what was it, a Wednesday, I think? And I arrived on a Friday evening. I had a 21 or 2 hour layover in Qatar, which was actually kind of cool. Spent from Friday until the following Friday there in the country. But the fun part was I had arrived right at, let's see, it was during their spring break, the end of their spring break. So the country, there's a lot of Maronite Catholics, and so I believe, if I'm wrong, please forgive me, I believe they observe what we in the U.S. would call the more traditional religious observations, religious holidays. In this case, it's Easter I'm talking about. But there's also Armenian Catholics there, and so they are more along the lines of the Orthodox order. And so I arrived just before that, and so I arrived just before Orthodox Easter. And so that meant the following Monday was a holiday, and that just meant I had a couple of days to not only get over jet lag, but to also, take a look at the country and see what the nation is about. It's a small country too. It's, everything that would be interesting to me to shoot is probably within a 2 hour drive. And that's if you're not on the highway, and there's not much highway there because it's such a small country. As I'm doing some research and looking at things, like, hey, this is really awesome. I mean, the university's here, and I go a little bit of south, I go a little bit north, and it's all just awesome. But on the political side of things too, if you were to talk about the nation of Israel, of course, in Lebanon, it is occupied Palestine. And you just have to be really sensitive and really careful, I guess is probably the best way to put it, as to how you approach these things and how you work through these types of things. Had I been to Israel, that would be a huge problem for going and visiting Lebanon, because they will question you at the least and possibly detain you. Again, depending on what the nature is of how that all comes about. Now, I've never been to Israel, but that is certainly something. Hey, I'm a traveler. I would love to go almost anywhere on the map. And but so I can truthfully answer those questions if they would ever be asked, and just simply say that, no, I've not been to Israel. So anyway, then I had a few days, which we'll get into with the photos, to look around at things. Spent some time in the classroom. Spent some time talking to other people at the school, getting to know them, hopefully, really well. But again, some people were gone because it was the tail end of spring break, and the international nature of everyone who works there. They just have, there's just different things going on. So I then flew out on Friday and was able to return home the following Sunday. So that's just it was a quick whirlwind type trip. And let's now get into the photos, and we're going to just be talking a little bit about more in detail all of that stuff. So the first photo that is shown there, either on the website or in the Facebook group, is this straight up view of a flag. It's the Qatari flag in the center, and then there's all these other flags kind of radiating around it. And so this is at Flag Plaza in Qatar. So I landed Thursday evening in Qatar, and also this was during the time of Ramadan. And so, in the evening time, everything is just very, I don't want to use the term rambunctious, but energetic for sure. And I decided, I'm just going to park the camera. It's a little bit late and whatnot. I totally felt safe and everything. There's nothing wrong with that in Doha. But I was just like, I'm going to go ahead and park the camera, and I just want to walk. I want to get my bearings for the place and get a feel for what it's like there. So in the following morning, I went out and went to Flag Plaza, where they've got all of these different national flags there. And my son in particular, my oldest son, he's got a thing. He's collecting flags. Not that he's been hardly anywhere except Canada, but he loves flags. Just the history behind flags, the design of flags, the makeup of what it tells about the culture that it represents. He just loves flags. So I was like, you know what? I'm totally thinking about my boy here when I'm making this shot. So went and got that shot, walked around. They've got this museum there of, what do they call it? Now I'm going to have to look it up on the map and make sure that I talk intelligently about it. It's the Museum of Islamic Art is where I ended up kind of sort of walking around. But I wanted to get over to this location along what they call the Corniche. And there's this thing called the Pearl Monument that I went to. And so I'm just walking along the riverfront along Dow Harbor. And right at the Pearl Monument, that's where I met this driver. He comes up and he's all like, I'll take you here and I'll take you there. And you can take the photos and the videos and whatever. And I was just like, yeah, whatever. Hindsight being 2020, well, I probably did the right thing because it was early morning. And being that it's during Ramadan, the public transportation system is not working right now. So it's just not a thing. So to have a personal driver to be able to take me places, certainly that helped a little bit. All right. So he took me to this place where we were able to see this sculpture that was celebrating, what do you want to call it, the FIFA Cup that happened there in 2022. It has some views of the city in the background, and I just made a quick panorama. And I should probably say, quick disclaimer, many of these pictures are really just intended to be informational. I'm not intending these to be like my quintessential art images or anything like that. But yeah, they're informational and they're great and whatnot for telling the story. But I don't necessarily intend these to be something like, these should be revered and awesome and all that. I got a couple that are like that, but not necessarily these from Doha especially. And then one of the places that he took me is this place called the Qatar Cultural Village. And he's showing me this map. And when he says Cultural Village, I'm like, ooh, that sounds good. That's something that would be interesting to me. It was all right. The best thing that was there was a mosque. And so I really appreciated that. But there was a photo museum there. I was like, whatever. And it just didn't float my boat with the types of images they had there. And but this mosque was pretty interesting. So the next image is just an outside detail of this mosque. And so I framed everything up. It's as best as possible, perfectly symmetrical. And I was in the shaded part. It's really direct sun, but there is quite a bit of haze just kind of going about. You could see in that image with the city in the background how there's just a lot of haze. And also in that image with the Flag Plaza, it's a white sky, basically. It's just all, overcast, basically. Well, by the time we got to this cultural village, the haze is dissipating, and this shot, though, is on the shadow side of the mosque. And so it worked out really well with just really seeing the nice ornate details, the beautiful colors popping. And then, of course, the symmetry is pretty sweet. I really, really like that and how that came out. And then I got one inside the mosque. This was a lot of fun. The gear I had taken, I had decided to go a little bit lighter. So I took the Sony A6400. And this was I think the 10 to 16 millimeter lens that I'm shooting inside the mosque at least. And so this next image, I just have, it's a low angle, down low on the floor, of course. And then I'm aiming up, and we've got these circular lights arrayed. It almost feels like a chandelier, but I mean, they're not, weighted in the center or nothing. They're all spread out. And then, of course, we have the windows on the side, and you have all that natural light flowing in. I thought it was kind of cool. So again, a good record shot of what the beauty is inside of this type of place, this mosque. And then the next image is the entrance. So we are in some bright sunshine on this shot. We can see some shadows being cast, and we can see the flip-flops on the steps of this entrance area. But again, we're looking at symmetry here. We got the brick on the floor as we're on the ground as we're coming up to the building, but then once we get to the building with the steps, it's nice and marble. Everything is just clean lines, wonderful colors, wonderful forms and shapes, and all of that, just perfect symmetry. I look at an architecture like this, and I usually like to think about, I want to get my lines as straight as possible. I want to get, if possible, like in this one, symmetry or some other thought like that, to where, because I'm paying careful attention to how I line up the subject and how I frame the subject and get those lines coming together just perfectly as possible anyway, then I'm going to have a good time enjoying the image afterward. And I think the viewer will have a good time enjoying the image afterward, because things just feel neat, and they feel in place, and they feel like they should feel when things are aligned well with the overall set of, what the architecture is. After this, I had a little bit of I guess I can call it a problem with my driver, because I made a mistake. And I was just like, there's these things called the mangroves here in Qatar. And so I was like, hey, how much would it cost to go up to these mangroves? He just latched onto that, and he would not let go. And I'm just like, dude, I was just asking. When he told me the price, I was like, no, I'm at the beginning of my trip. I have a very limited budget. If this was the end of the trip and I had some money left over, I'd be like, okay, I might be in a different spot, but I'm in the very beginning of the trip. And had I thought of that again at the very beginning of the overall conversation, maybe that would have changed things. But I'd already spent about an hour with him, and it's just like, okay, to add this, and I've got my flight to catch and all these things. I was just like, no, I'm not going to do that. Well, of course, he latched onto it, and he just would not let it go. And finally, I'm just like, no, we need to stick to the original plan. Just take me there now. And the ending result was that he would take me to back, I should say, to the area where he picked me up. And in specific, he would take me to Souk Waqif. And when I had arrived the previous night, I didn't go to exactly the place I should have gone, which was, I was kind of shooting myself in the foot a little bit. The Souk Waqif, there's a big mosque there, but just, I think it's a little bit to the west of the mosque, there's this huge shopping, with market and stalls and all these things. And I kind of missed that part. I saw a lot of different stores and such, but they weren't what I was looking for, what I was hoping for. And he dropped me off, and I went through and saw these stalls, and I was just like, this is what I need. This is what I was wanting last night. And of course, it's Friday now, and things are just closed because we're about 10:30 in the morning now. And I'm just like, oh, well, such is life. Well, I did find one fellow that was open, and I was able to buy my son a flag. So that was cool. I was glad for that. But still, I was just like, I would have had a lot more fun Thursday evening had I just walked a little further and found this place. And then I would have just wandered all through the whole thing, and it would just been wonderful experience. But I didn't do that, so that's all right. Nothing wrong with that. But the next image here, these wheelbarrows, they have these really bright yellow wheels. And this is in the Souk Waqif shopping area. And I came by these and was like, that is so cool. I need to do that for my farm because, okay, you've got your standard wheelbarrow with the 2 legs on the back. But what they did here is they attached an axle and some wheels. So it's just a little push cart now. It's a 3-wheeled push cart. I'm just like, yes, please. I want one of those. And I still have yet to do that, but still, I think it's really cool. And I liked how this was set up with the dominant item here in the foreground. And then we just have at least 2 more with the yellow wheels. And then we got some more in the background, one with blue wheels and so on. And it just kind of these leading lines taking you down. But still, really, I took the picture because these things were just so cool. And I just wanted to have something to have a memory of sorts with that. So then I got on the plane, back to the hotel, packed up, showered, packed up, tried to get on the subway to go back to the airport. And the subway was closed until something like 2:00. And my flight was scheduled to leave at 3. I was like, well, that's not going to work. So I went basically just to the edge of the road, found some fella who was going to take pity on me. He was just a cabbie, a taxi driver. And then I was just like, look, I already spent all my money because I had changed a little bit into the Qatari currency. I was like, I'm sorry, I already spent all my money. I've got some US cash. And I was like, look, $7. Will that get me there? And he's like, yes, that'll be fine. So paid him $7 US to take me to the airport, got there just fine, walked around the airport, an amazing airport, by the way. And they've got this gardens area. And I was just like, whoa, this is really sweet. And I started thinking on the way back, maybe I don't need to go out and get that hotel because I had a 14-hour, I think, layover on the way back. So 21-hour layover on the way there, but 14 hours on the way back. I was just like, yeah, I can probably go ahead and just be like, forget that. I'm just going to stay in the airport. And that's actually what I did on the way back because this gardens area, it was cool. It wasn't everything I hoped it would be, as far as the ability to rest and whatnot. But still, it was kind of nice to have all those plants and the waterfalls and such indoors there in the airport. All right, so I got on the plane at 3, landed at around 6 to 6:30 in Beirut. And this is Friday evening, of course. But at the airport, oh my goodness, it was such a madhouse. The lady who would be my boss, she was, if I were to take the job, she was there to pick me up. And so very chaotic, kind of somewhat reminiscent, at least a little bit, of when I went to India. Again, a little bit. India is way more chaotic. But without having cell service, I was very grateful that there was a Wi-Fi service once I left immigration and was able to then get on Wi-Fi and communicate with them. And I was like, they're like, yeah, we're almost there. And I was like, all right. So I just stepped outside, flagged them down. They flagged, whatever the case was. And then we got whisked away, got to my guest room, and then effectively just crashed. All right. So the next day is Saturday. And so that's our day to go to church. That's our Sabbath, basically. But I got up early, though. Actually, I knew I would still be not over jet lag. And so she asked me, she's like, well, we have a pastor here. He's way into birding, and he's going to go out at 6 a.m. And he thought he would take you with him if you'd like to go. And I was like, absolutely. I'm not necessarily into birding per se. So I went birding with this fellow, and it was interesting. He was like, well, we're going to start at the city dump. It was like, no better place. I mean, that's where the birds are going to be, right? So he took me to the city dump, and there wasn't hardly anything that I wanted to shoot as relates to birds, but I did find a few of the good things. So the next image that we're looking at is this boat that's out in the Mediterranean, and I converted to black and white. And this was the first image I ever tried out the new noise reduction algorithm that they put into Lightroom. And as I look at the details, it did a really good job. And I was really pleased with how that happened. This was shot at 800 ISO at 350 millimeters. And let's see what that shutter speed is, 1/25 of a second at f6.3. So I'm using Sony's 70 to 350 lens. And so it's way zoomed out. And if I remember right, I think I was even, no, I couldn't have been handheld, although it does have image stabilization. So anyway, but I was like, yeah, I got to jack this all the way up to ISO 800 just so I can get a reasonable image. And yeah, this was a reasonable image. And with that noise reduction, it turned out really well. And I was just really pleased with getting in on those details of those fishermen on that boat. And then, of course, any old noise reduction on that smooth sky would work beautifully, because if you lose your details in a smooth sky like that, it doesn't matter because it's a smooth sky. But of course, noise reduction and keeping those details on the boat and on the fishermen, very important. So I was really pleased with how that worked. In that very same vicinity, right near that same area, I got this next shot. This is a panoramic. Sun is just coming up, basically over the hills behind the city. And this is kind of a jetty of sorts that is stretching out into the sea, into the Mediterranean Sea. And this concrete structure that's there on this, what is it? You have a ground level, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels greater than ground level. It looks like an abandoned building, though. And it basically is, because in 2020, I think it was, they had this thing that you just referred to as the Beirut blast, or the blast. And that's what the next picture is of. The fellow that was driving me around, he was like, well, you heard about the blast? I'm like, well, yeah. He's like, well, here it is. As we're driving around, he pulled over to the side of the road, and I got this next shot, converted to black and white as well. And so I've got 2 cranes in the foreground, one on the right side, one on the left side. The central structure, that's the storage unit where this, I think it was a fertilizer, was stored for several years, those 2 or 3 years. And then finally something happened. It just exploded. And if you're not sure what this is, just do a quick YouTube search on the Beirut blast, and you'll see a few, either it's, just CCTV or people with their cell phones and such like that. And you can see that shockwave that just bam. Now, the school that I was at, they're about 5 miles or so up the hill away from the city, maybe a little more than that, possibly 7 miles. They had some windows that broke out because it was a straight shot from this thing all the way up the hill to where these windows were. And they had some windows that just completely shattered that far away. That's just how powerful this blast was. So the fact that there's even this structure that is still standing just baffles me. But anyway, this image, I converted to black and white because there's a lot of color and it just distracts you from the feeling, from the idea of the magnitude of such a blast, the magnitude of the devastation. And I think the black and white helps keep us thinking along those lines. We look at this structure that's kind of torn down. We look at the debris in the foreground, and we're just like, yeah, there's something not right here. Whereas if we had color in this image, it would be just, I don't know, I just think it would be a little bit it would take us a while, I guess, to get to that point of understanding. And that's what I wanted to make sure was top idea of understanding, is just understanding desolation, understanding destruction. All right, we ended up at this place called Pigeon Rocks. Beautiful place, right downtown, right in the flight path even of the airport. And I've got this panorama here of some greenery in the foreground as it goes up along to the right-hand side. We've got the rocky cliffs and the whatnots, and we got some buildings there on top of the rocks. Well, we then have these rocks out in the cove or the bay or whatever you call it. And they're super easy to get to. It's just whether or not you can find a parking place. Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult. Even early in the morning, It wasn't that difficult early in the morning, but I went back on Thursday, I think it was. No. I went back on Monday, I think it was, and it was rough to find a parking spot, but we did, and was able to take a boat out and around these rocks, so it was kind of cool. Worked out really well. The next image, so after going to church and whatnot, and having a great lunch with the folks there, jet lag is weird. Sometimes it can hit me, and I just like take days and days and days and days. And this time, though, having the ability to sleep on the plane the way I did, and then that time in Doha, I was just able to, and then I slept on the plane it was a short sleep, but I slept on the plane from Doha to Beirut. Just the way it all worked out, it actually was quite easy for me to transition to that time zone. So we decided, I was like, well, I'm a traveler. I love to take advantage as best as possible. And I don't remember the name of this place that we went to in the afternoon, but we went to this place where there was some Roman ruins. It was only about 10 minutes from the school. And I was just like, this is so awesome, because we're just literally walking among these ruins. And there's these columns that are just lying along the ground. There was this one structure that had this archway that was at least 20 feet high, and it had all of these roots growing up and around it. It's the kind of thing that looks like the tree roots are actually what's supporting the rocks now. It's kind of that kind of transition. And it just was so awesome. I was just thinking to myself, man, I could see myself coming here easily every month, if not every other week, to take the kids for a little walk or something like that, and just kind of get the wiggles out or whatever. And we just had a great time. Everything is overgrown, so we have all these rocks and whatnot poking out of the grasses and such, but things are definitely overgrown, and they let it go natural, so to speak, especially when you have a financial crisis and the government and other entities simply cannot afford to hire people and keep people employed. Things just end up going to pot, so to speak. I wouldn't think that this area is any different than what it normally would be, but it's just something that is a little bit in the back of my mind as I'm trying to make this decision. Do I want to come out here? Whatever the case is. The next picture I photographed the next day. So this was Sunday morning. No. This is the evening time, I think, because of course we're in Beirut. We are inland from the city, and the sun sets over the Mediterranean Sea. So I got up to the roof of the building that I was staying in. So the building that I was staying in, the place that would be my classroom and my office was the ground floor. The other side of the ground floor was the television studios for what we call Hope Channel. And that is a production studio or effectively a television channel ministry that is operated by the church. And that's another thing that excited me about it. I was like, hey, we've got these Hope Channel studios right there. There's got to be something that I could collaborate with, something I could support, something I could do anything for. It doesn't have to be anything major. But anyway, I digress. Well, the second and third floor is the girls' dorm. And I was staying on the third floor, if I remember right. Memory is escaping me. Yeah, it was the third floor. And then, and also the fourth floor is dorm rooms and guest rooms and whatever else. And then there's roof access. And so I had breakfast on this roof every morning. But I got a time lapse. This is just a still frame we're seeing here, but I got a time lapse of the sun setting over the city. And I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. I really was just like, oh my goodness, this is so amazing. So to have this kind of view every morning was truly a treat. All right, so the next day we went to this place. I had done some research beforehand, and I had let the folks know that I was going to be with that were taking me around. I was like, I would love to go to this place called Batera Gorge. And it's a waterfall, and it is about a 300-meter total waterfall. So that's about 900 feet. That is a significant waterfall. And it's really cool because as you're coming up to it, you see this creek, this river, this really small river or a large creek, and it's flowing, it's tumbling over rocks and doing whatever. And you pull off into the parking lot. You go over a tiny little bridge where it flows under the road or whatever. You pull off into this little parking lot. You pay your fee of, what was it, $1.50 or something like that to get in. And then you kind of walk around and you head down into this gorge that's cut out. And the thing that's absolutely amazing about this place is the waterfall just tumbles over the edge. And it's just this small little stream, as it were. And we were even there in April. So, we're having some fresh melt coming from the mountains. And you have this natural bridge. So it's going into this hole, and this natural bridge is coming out in front of it. And then there's this other natural bridge about 100 feet down, give or take, maybe 70 feet down. There's this other natural bridge that you can literally walk onto and get closer to and feel the mist of the fall as it's going down into this deep, deep, deep cavern, this just abyss. But if you were to step back and as you're coming down into it, there's a third natural bridge that you can see. So just take a look, Batera Gorge, Baatara, Batera Gorge, and take a look at the waterfall there. Now, the lighting, some images that we're going to see in a moment, the lighting was horrendous for when I was there. Plus the mist that was coming up, I just could not see that third natural bridge. And nor did I get down there because I was with a group. I didn't want to just, take forever like I normally do. And it was the absolute middle of the day. I mean, we literally pulled up at like noon or something, maybe 11:30, somewhere in there. So it was just like, yeah, this isn't happening. So I got some nice images to tell my story. And I got a couple of images that I was excited about as far as some really awesome stuff in the gorge, in the waterfall. But this first image is just a little bit of this gorge, of this valley type area. And that's the other mystery of this place. And that is the water goes down and you don't see where it flows. It just goes into an underground river, basically, after it falls down its 300 meters or so. And I was like, yeah, this place is legit. I love this place. I definitely want to come back. I need to come back, not only to bring my kids and show them this awesome place, but to photograph it more, to show up early, to get there, to spend the time, just to do it justice sort of thing. It would just be amazing to be able to do. All right, so this is a panorama. The next shot, you'll see a suspension bridge. They called it a monkey bridge. And so I paid about $8 for some zip lining, the monkey bridge, and actually I ended up paying $10 because I did not have exact change and they weren't giving change, so whatever. So to go across this monkey bridge, to do a zip line, to then do a controlled descent zip line down to the waterfall itself, and then take a cable car ride back up to the top. And I was like, yeah, I can pay $8 for that. So this is looking from the start of the monkey bridge, and we can see the steps coming down the hill and then the pathway going on in towards the gorge where the waterfall is. And of course, as you can see here, there's no river coming. It's all underground at this point. So wherever it goes, I don't know. I haven't looked it up to where the outlet is, but there you have it. The next image is just looking down. You can see my shadow. And then of course you can see another shadow, the guy behind me. He volunteered to carry my tripod because it was just like, no, that's not the best thing. Well, I could have secured it to my pack, my camera bag, but he volunteered to carry it across for me. So anyway, we see my feet, we see the monkey bridge, we see how that is attached, how those planks of wood are attached. We have two cables going across, and then we just have some thin wire. I wouldn't be able to guess at the gauge, maybe 14 gauge wire, possibly. That's lashing these 2x4s is what it looks like to me. I don't know exactly what the size is, of course, but lashing these 2x4s onto the cables. And that was it. Of course, I had a harness with a line above me, but so I crossed that, just, doing the tourist thing, having a lot of fun with it. It was pretty awesome. The next shot is coming into the waterfall. So we can see the sky above. We see the first natural bridge, which creates a hole where the water then tumbles through. We then see the second natural bridge, which is where the path leads us to. And then we can see the mist rising up from underneath that second natural bridge. And we can just see the contrast and how terribly wicked, crazy it is. We're just not going to see down into that gorge with all that mist and with that bright sunshine coming up the way it is. We definitely need that sun to be a lot lower in the sky in order to be able to balance it out just right and to see down into that gorge, or to not have as much water going over so we have less mist. But anyway, still totally glad I was able to go. It was amazing and fun, and certainly just good opportunities to get to know the people as well. All right, this next shot is one of, I have a couple of shots, but we're only showing one here. Inside that gorge, as it were, where the waterfall is coming down through that hole in the earth, and we can see the rock, we can see the moss. This was so stupid high contrast. I think on the exposure bracketing I got, I think it was a 12-stop difference between the sky and the foreground areas here. And I used this image, actually it wasn't technically this image, but this general lighting scenario and framing to develop for myself a somewhat, in my opinion, easier way to process the exposure blend using Lumenzia while not having that hideous fringe around the high contrast edges like you can often get. And I'm not going to go into those details now, but it's just something that as I was processing it the first time, I was like, oh, this sucks. And this is why I don't like exposure blending, why I don't like luminosity masks, why I don't like, because it just takes too much time. And at the computer, I would much rather spend my time with the experience and rather spend my time just having fun out there in the wilderness rather than sitting here. Now, of course, when I have to sit here at the computer, of course I'm going to do that. But to just hours and hours on end that it can take, that's where I get a little bit less motivated to make that happen. So anyway, developed a little technique on that. I shared it with my people in the Great Outdoors Photography School a couple of weeks ago, probably a couple of months ago now, and had a good conversation with it. It was a lot of fun to share that and to get the idea across, just to help them understand. We've got a little extra something here that is pretty much easy to do, and we just have to go in the right order, the right process, and it's easy to do. But I really appreciate how the tones came through in this rock, the glistening water. Of course, I was using a polarizer so I could control that glisten a little bit on the rocks there and make sure that greenery comes through nice and vibrant. The next image is just a picture of me in the scene. One of the fellows that was there, the guy that was operating the little cable car thing that would take me back up the hill. It's not a very long trip, but I had to wait a little bit. It was so funny. I walk up, I show him my ticket. Oh, he's like, yes, it will be just a few more minutes. It is broken right now. I was like, that is not what you tell your customer. I don't care who you are. You don't tell them it's broken. Because there's something that the motor was broken or whatever. So I was like, yeah, do I really want to go on this? But I decided, I'm still going to go on it. It's fine. I'm going to trust that it's fine. And he actually gave me the option. He was really nice. He's like, are you okay with others going with you, or do you want to go alone? And I was like, well, I think I'd rather go alone so I can easily turn around and I can get video either way. And I actually ended up messing up. I didn't get as much video as I had hoped to get. But anyway, so a little picture of me with my smile and my hat and my gear or whatever. So yeah, it's all good. The next shot on the way back, this is the driver I was with. He's a taxi driver. And we passed by his house on the way there, but on the way back, he invited us over for coffee. And I was like, well, sounds good to me. So we all stopped. We had two vehicles. And so we all stopped and he gave us the coffee. And it was a Turkish style of coffee, which I don't think I've ever had before. And I actually enjoyed it. I'm not a coffee drinker in the least. I was in college and it nearly tore my gut apart. And, but this is actually pretty good. Now it was in these really tiny cups, these little espresso type cups. And I ladened it with sugar. But yeah, it was pretty good. So it was nice to be able to just have that, again, that experience, not only with the people I was with, but his family was there. And you're sitting in his living room. Then he took us out to his patio. And just that kind of thing where you have an experience with somebody who lives there, who is in the middle of all of this turmoil, this economic turmoil. And when we were done, he then took us back to the school, and then he was paid for his services, but then I took him on my own later. And we went to a few different locations, and we went to a shopping center, and I bought a pizza. And I wanted to buy him something, and he was, oh, no, you don't need to do that. Very congenial, very nice guy. Well, I bought this whole pizza. It was like, I don't know, a 12-inch pizza maybe. And I had it loaded with various veggies, peppers and mushrooms and all sorts of things. And then it was awesome because I also had to order it dairy free because that'll make me sick. And the dude behind the cash register, he's all like, oh, I will take off 25% because you're getting no cheese. And I was like, that's how it should be everywhere. Here in the States, there literally was a place that we went to in Portland, Oregon. This was probably 20 years ago now. They literally charged us more money to hold things off of the pizza. Boy, howdy, that made me mad. Anyway, so they actually took money off because I was not getting the cheese. Well, I insisted. I was like, look, I'm not going to eat all this. It's just going to go to waste. Please eat it. And he was like, okay, I'll eat a piece. And then I shoved another piece on his plate. And so he had two pieces of the pizza. So that was nice to, again, have something to share. But the reason I wanted to tell you all this, in that shopping center, you really couldn't tell there was a financial crisis going on. And this is what was weird to me, because we had this financial crisis happening, but there was still lots of commerce happening. And I just made some kind of comment about that. And his very simple reply was, not everybody is poor. I was just like, hit the nail on the head, buddy. You are absolutely right. Not everybody is poor. The problem is, though, nowadays, about 85 to 90% of the people are considered below the poverty line. So where before it was a normal, if you want to ever call it normal, what would that be? 10%, 15% below the poverty line? And now it's 85% below the poverty line? Yeah, not everyone is poor. I get that. But my pizza too, the pizza and the soft drink, it was like $5. I couldn't believe it. And a standard, regular run-of-the-mill shopping mall looked like, Anytown, USA type shopping center. And, that pizza was just $5. I was super happy with how affordable it was, but also, yeah, not everybody is. I was a bit touched by that. So anyway, he took me to this other place. This next image, I decided to just show one image of this location because I could really do some research and unfold the history behind this little nook and cranny of a place that you would sneeze and miss very easily. But it says inscriptions, Egyptian, now this is in French as well, Egyptians and Assyrians. And the thing is that from Nebuchadnezzar's time, when the Babylonians ruled the roost, basically, there was this little inscription made on one of the rock walls. And so I photographed that. And I'm not showing it here, but I just wanted to tell you the story. And so he made an inscription, this is where the Assyrian king or whatever, and they talked about the Babylonians and all these other things. So we have these inscriptions that are talking about these different rulers that ruled through this area. And there's also a big plaque there, not a plaque, but a stone carving there for Napoleon when he ruled the region, and just all these other different rulers down through history. And it was just really cool. As someone who obviously loves photography, loves travel, I love history. Photography and travel, they go hand in hand. Those are equal loves, as it were. History is not a distant second, but also not like right up there with them. But yeah, I just love history and historic stuff. And when it adds that interest to it, that's where I just get really jazzed, and I love it. So it's awesome. All right. So he took me to this little place. I was like, I'm on cloud nine. And then I was like, let's go back to Pigeon Rocks. So we went back to Pigeon Rocks. He stayed up with a car. I walked down because I had seen when I was there previously, I had seen that there were boats that people were going out on rides. And I was like, that looks awesome. And this Pigeon Rock is a natural arch. And you can get on the boat and you can go through the natural arch. Amazing. So this next image is this abandoned rundown boat that is now filled with flowers, and it's on the rocky coast and all that sorts of stuff. But I just like, yeah, this is an awesome image. So I needed to show it. The next image is of Pigeon Rock. I'm on the boat. I'm shooting towards the city, and we can see the buildings in the city in the background, and we can then see the archway. And again, this is in the evening time, so the city skyline is full on front lit, and it cost me, I think, what was it? $15-$20. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was a little more than I wanted to spend, only because I'm cheap, but still, it was a really fun time, and I got some great images. This next image was in one of the caves, and I just love stuff like this. It has the texture. It's a black and white conversion. Got the water on the ground, on the base of the image. We got the texture. We got the forms, the shapes, all this stuff coming in with this rock cave. And I was just like, yeah, this is the stuff. I love it. I love it. I love it. The next image is another rock cave, but I've got my boat driver in the image, and I converted this one to black and white too. And so here we've got the young man who was driving me around in this boat. And yeah, just, what was it? 20 minutes, half hour at the very most, right around sunset time. It was just a lot of fun. It was awesome. All right. The following day, we went to the town of Sidon. Currently it's called Sida, but in the Bible, it's referenced as Sidon. And oh, that was amazing. Again, another place I just need to go back to. There was this old ruins that we went to, Temple of Eshmun. And we also had the librarian at the school with us. It was so awesome. I tell you, I was so spoiled on this trip. We had the librarian of the school with us, and he's into architecture, and he just knows everything about all this whole region. And I'm just like, this is amazing. So I got a lot of video of him telling the story about this Temple of Eshmun. Well, the next picture that we're seeing here is the Sidon Sea Castle. And this was a castle built by the Crusaders. And so he's telling us a little bit about the history of the Crusaders as well, the dates and whatever else was going on at the time and things like that. And so this is just a panorama of one of the towers there of the Sidon Sea Castle. It was pretty cool stuff. And then after that, it was time to eat. So we went across the street to this little falafel place. And so I got a picture here of the fellow making my falafel, fresh tomatoes and pickled, I think it was turnips, some kind of peppers in there. Of course, the falafel itself, some kind of sauce, the tahini sauce, I think it is as well. But then there was a hotter sauce, a spicier sauce, which he didn't put enough on. But I grabbed some of these other peppers and added it to it. Oh, it was delicious. Whole thing cost 200,000 lira, which is about $2. And boy, howdy, it filled me up. But it was great. Again, this idea of the experience, this idea of just how fun it was. It was just amazing. Loved it, loved it, loved it. All right, our last picture that we're going to be looking at today is of the soap factory, the soap museum, I should say, in Sidon. They have been making soap there since about the 1650s. And again, I was doing some research. Oh, another thing, just a side note, we have a pug here at the house. His name is Sidon. My son named him. And, well, he named him for a video game character, but before I approved the name, I had to look it up. I was like, of course, that's where I've heard it. It's a biblical name. It's a biblical city. So anyway, I was doing some research and I found this soap museum in Sidon, and they had been making soap since roughly the middle of the 1600s. And I was like, yeah, I want to go there. That looks really cool. I ended up, although at the gift shop, I spent way too much money. My mom was like, oh, pick me up some soap. And I ended up spending I'm not going to tell you the amount. It's embarrassing. I spent too much money. But she did pay me back half of it because half of it was for her. But this is a drying rack for the soap, and they just take you through the whole process about how it's made, how you put the stamps on there, different things that they carved soap into, different forms that they carved soap into. It's a really cool place. The admission fee was only like $1.50 or something like that. And so that's another thing I just love about Lebanon. Things are cheap. It's just wonderful. Even with a financial crisis, things for the locals who don't have an outside influence of money have gotten drastically more expensive because of the devaluing of their currency. But otherwise, things are definitely cheap. All right. So that concludes the whole idea of the photos, the overall experience. I mean, when I was done, I effectively had a free day on Thursday. Well, this was Monday that I went to Sidon. Tuesday and Wednesday I spent at the school doing interviews and in the classroom, looking, getting to know the students a little bit and things like that. Got to know the current teacher who's there, one of the adjunct professors who's there. She's great. Oh my goodness. She's a little bit older than me. And when we had a meal together, and I was impressed. I was like, this is definitely really a really good, effectively she'll be a coworker. I would be her boss of sorts since she's an adjunct. But I was just like, yeah, this is about like my current position. I've got, 3 adjuncts that I work with here in my current position. I've got about 12 students in my program. I got a lot more students from product design and other areas in my current program. But they have 12 students there that are specifically in this design program. And there's just a lot of things that were certainly aligned very well that just made it sound so cool, sound awesome. All right. So then I had effectively a free day on Thursday. I ended up going down to the National Museum on my own, took a cab down there, took a look around there. That was pretty cool. And then went shopping a little bit more so I could get a souvenir. I got one little fridge magnet, basically. That was about it. Other than the soap, I had already spent my wad on the soap. And because I spent my wad on the soap, I ultimately I did cancel my hotel in Doha on the return flight because I was just like, I got to save money somewhere. So I canceled that. Now it was only $35, $32, whatever it was. But still, I was like, I will stay in the airport and I will save that money since I overspent there at the soap factory, soap museum. Flew back home to Boise, where my folks live. They live in that area. And then drove home on Sunday. And then I spent a week just contemplating. And then I contacted the folks back and I said, I really appreciate it. This is definitely something we want to do. All right. So this next portion of the episode is a deeper dive, and I'm going to get into some spiritual type talk. I'm going to get into some, religious reasonings and things like that. These are the things yeah, I am a spiritual person, and I want to do what I can to spread the good news. That is the gospel. I want to do this kind of work, and that's why I work at a church-owned university here in the U.S. To be able to do that in quote unquote the mission field, as it were, really just was firing on all cylinders, because I've gone on plenty of short-term mission trips. The first one I went on, I was 16. And then I went on several starting in 2007 through 2014. Yeah, there's just always been an interest. And I volunteer for an organization here in town that sponsors indigenous workers in their area, in the country that they work. They live there, and so they sponsor them. And so this is just something that's a part of me. It's something that is, if I can be more involved and more acutely involved, yay, that would be amazing. But in talking with the wife and thinking about things with the family and all these things that are involved, and I'm not going to tell you all the details because that just wouldn't be right, I don't think. But I'm going to tell you just some of the things that were going through our mind and what was leading us through all these things that happened. So I communicated with them. Yeah, we really want to do this. We want to try and make this happen. Well, this position is a official, if you will, missionary, I guess we can call it, position for the church. And it is supported by our global church entity. We call it the General Conference. Other churches I know call theirs the General Conference as well. They're headquartered in a city in Maryland near Washington, D.C. But anyway, it is a super long process to vet a pending missionary. And just to make sure all these things are in line. So the school had already voted to hire me. While I was there, the regional church office voted to hire me. And then I came back and said, yeah, this would be a good thing. It's going to be stressful, of course, but it'd be a good thing. And so I decided to continue looking into it and trying to figure out how we could make it happen, and trying to bend reality in some cases. We got passports for the boys, the 3 boys who didn't yet have passports, and the wife. That was very expensive. But we did not pay for the expedited service, so it took forever. And that was one thing that delayed, and other things delayed, and this and that and the other thing. And it's, like I said, the church television studio is right there, and all these other things are just crazy awesome. And let's face it, I like to travel, that. And to have that life for my family would be amazing. And ultimately, it came down, as we're trying to look through all these things, I ended up having to withdraw from the process. And so, oh boy, was it stressful, and I was a little bit disappointed. It's probably a lighthearted way of saying it, because there's so many good things I wanted to make happen, but it just wasn't working out. And again, like I said, I'm not going to say all the details. So if you write and email me or whatever, expect me to continue keeping some things close to the home, so to speak. So all of the things, though, with what we understood to be financial items and all sorts of other good things, those all worked out. But there was just there was 2 key items that were just causing too much strife and too much, we just weren't seeing, it felt like the doors were closed, I guess is probably the best way to put it. And so I was just like, yeah, we just have to, redouble our efforts here. This is where the Lord wants us, and we're going to at least spend more time here. And I was talking with my pastor, and he had we just switched churches also. We from one congregation to another here in town. We've got like 10 churches in town, but anyway, there's a considerable concentration of our denomination in this town in Walla Walla Valley. But anyway, so we switched to this other church somewhat recently. And so my new pastor, I was telling him a little bit about this, and he's just like, yeah, I can see you're disappointed. But he's like, if it's the Lord's plan, it's going to still work out. It's just that this was the wrong timing. I was just like, yeah, that's pretty encouraging. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate that. And so, yeah, officially I'm going to say, yeah, I hold out some kind of hope that this is, well, some kind of hope. I hold out a lot of hope that this is going to happen. But yeah, the timing for when this was all coming down in May, late May, maybe early June. And so I was like, yeah, that's going to be what it is. So it is what it is, and that's where we're at. So that's the main gist behind it all. Working over there as a missionary, we would be able to come back and be on furlough for 7 weeks a year. Oh, but it would just be amazing to be there on site in this location where so much biblical history is recorded, so much biblical history has taken place. And then when I was there too, I started looking at plane tickets. I was like, well, I'm really interested in tracing some of Paul's footsteps. What would that take? What would it take to get over to Corinth? What would it take to get to Ephesus? What would it take to trace his footsteps, basically? And I was like, okay, so to Athens or Istanbul, those were the most expensive flights. That would be about $250 round trip. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Because from here, my little old, Walla Walla, we're looking at $2,200, $2,500 to get over there. It just ain't never going to happen. And so if we could live there, that type of thing could turn into a long weekend, or who knows what, there's various breaks or whatever that's possible maybe. And maybe I could do other volunteer work for the regional church office that's there. I don't know. It's just that there were so many things. It's like, oh, this would be amazing. So as we fast forward now to middle of July 2023, I want to now transition to some other news that is coming together. I'm still putting the final touches on things, but I've had in the back of my mind, I've had this notion that I need to change what I'm doing with my photography, with what I do with my life in photography. My photo life is what I need to call it. And that is, back to Lebanon, we would get if we were to do it, we would get a 20-foot container to load things up. And I've got a 44-inch printer that I was going to bring with me and teach printing to those students over there. They have a Mac lab that has some relatively recent, about 1-year-old Mac computers. And so for me to bring my printer would have just been mind-blowing to be able to do that over there. But anyway, I digress. So I've had this idea about a new direction percolating for a good 5 months maybe, but it's just all been like, no, the timing's not right. I'm not going to do it. Blah, 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 blah. So what I've ended up doing, and the people at the Great Outdoors Photography School already know this, that is, I've decided I need to pause my efforts at the Great Outdoors Photography School. And so those things, and what I mean by pausing is this is going to be through February 2024. And with this pause, I'm just not going to be producing any new information there. So the people who are signed up for the lifetime item, they're going to continue to have access to the website and email access and stuff like that, at least through February 2024. That'll give me the time I need to reassess that portion of the work that I'm doing. And we'll just see how that goes. I need some time to unplug just a little bit in that regard, and we'll see if it comes back or not. But the most popular thing that came about from that photography school was our live sessions. Oh my goodness, they were so awesome. We had some regulars that showed up almost all the time. And the conversations, just being able to talk about what your problems are and what your questions are. We had a guy who was just like, he was preparing for a gallery show. Well, I've done a couple of gallery shows and was able to give him advice and to help him think through with his specific issues that he was dealing with, to help him think through and get him on the right track. And we did this in the group setting, so everyone is able to chime in and be like, yeah, that makes sense. Or did you think about this? Or did you think about that? And just awesome stuff. Or maybe people have travel plans, or maybe people are doing something with printing, or maybe people are doing something with a technique in Photoshop, or whatever the case is. And yeah, it just has turned out to be an amazing time. And so it is painful to park that, to pause that and say, I need time. And as I told them, I don't want to do this, but I feel I have to do this. I started this last school year, the 2022-23 school year. I started during my goals, what do we call it? Goals and whatever session that I have with the chair of my department. I literally started out that meeting last October saying, my goal is to not totally dry up and blow away because I'm burnt out. And some significant improvements have happened, but still, this is one of those things. Again, I just need that type of thing so I can continue on that path of effectively not burning out. With that, however, comes a different approach that I want to explore. I love the printing, and here it comes. I'm going to be releasing, the goal is to establish a cadence, establish a establish a program, a schedule where I release an image a month. Now, it might be releasing an image a quarter. We'll see. It might be new images. It might be from my library of images. I don't know what it's going to be just yet. Right now, I'm open to both, and it'll probably just be that. Well, I'll either dive into the archives of my images, and I'll release an image. If you want to get on the email list and be the first to know about those releases, of course, follow the link there. It goes to my website. It's the very first link in your show notes, and you can get yourself on the email list. By doing that, you're also going to get yourself the copy of making photographs, the process I use for every scene. And it's just a little PDF you can put on your phone and reference that, so you can have the same general idea of the mindset that I use, and you can become familiarized with the mindset that I use when I'm at every scene. Because I take every scene for what it is. Uniquely awesome, hopefully, but a unique approach for each subject, for each scene. I think that's important to do. And so if you'd like to do that and get notified when a new print comes out, then I invite you to get yourself on the email list. Those of you that are already on my email list, that's coming, that first one, hopefully, maybe I can get it done by the end of July here. But my goal is to have it done by August, so we can start in August. But I would love to start in July, because what I want to do, I want to use the calendar year, well, the physical year of starting in July and ending in June. And I have some reasons for that I'm not going to divulge just yet, but that is, of course, the year that we use at the university here. But I just like that cadence of that starting in the summer and ending in the late spring or early summer. So what we're going to do there is have a print that is released, and it's probably going to be a limited edition print. And I'm going to have some type of way to put hopefully my personal thumbprint on it, so to speak, something that is unique So it's not, quote, just a print kind of a thing. So stay tuned for that. I'm working on it. I'm ironing out the details, trying to get it all figured out. And this is the kind of thing where I've acquired this 44-inch printer and I've just not been using it. I've got this Canon, this 13 by 19 printer. I've just not been using it. And it just bugs me. Every time I come into my office, I just am not printing. And so that's going to be a subtle direction shift. And what I'm trying to think on this too is I'm going to be increasing YouTube productions because I want to talk about these photos on YouTube so I can show you these photos. I think I'm still going to be keeping the audio podcast going just so you can hear the story this way as well, but anticipate seeing these on YouTube as well so you can actually see these images and you can see the print come together, as it were. Again, still ironing out the details, but that's the kind of thing I'm looking for. This would mean that I don't do anywhere near as much, if any at all, interviews with people. I kind of am feeling a little bit sad about that, but there's just a lot of prep that goes into an interview. And every episode takes at least 4 hours in addition to the recording time to get out there. And so it's just a huge time commitment for these items. And well, yeah, being able to bring it in all in-house is going to allow me to really put that schedule out there, to work that schedule and not have to work with someone else's schedule, which again, that last conversation I had with Nicholas Warner about Oman, I was amazed. And then I'm there in Lebanon and I'm just like, how close is Oman? It's very close. And I could get down there and I could shoot in Oman very easily. And, just the wheels are spinning of all the opportunity that could be happening. And I'm just loving it. The potentials, of course, it's whatever. But that conversation I had with Nicholas, though, I mean, that was amazing. And all the conversations I've had with all these people that you look back in the catalog, there's just a lot of great conversations with great people. But when I transition, it's going to be more about an individual image, what I learned with that image, and of course, the design aspects, a little bit of teaching about that image, a little bit of why does this image work for me? So it's about insight into why that works for me. And hopefully that'll be something that you can learn from as well, to where you can understand a mindset about the creation of the image, and then you can hopefully learn to apply that to your work and put your own thumbprint on your work. I don't want you to think, Brent expects me to mimic him. By no means would I ever want that to happen. What I want to happen is for you to have a successful experience creating your own images and soliciting in your viewers the thoughts and ideas and the emotions and all the other good things that come out of looking at a photograph, experiencing a photograph. I want you to be able to have success in doing that too. And by having this type of approach, maybe this is a better way to affect those things. I'll get to print more because I just love printing, but we'll also focus more on that idea of the creative process in a way that is almost cloak and dagger like, because I'm not going to come out, we're going to look at this creative thing and we're going to look at that and we're going to do this. No, it's going to be about this image. How does this image succeed? How does this image have challenges? What does this image, why does it do that? And all these things. And we're going to dissect an image and understand its creation of how it came together, but also why I think it works. And of course, maybe you're going to think I'm full of hot air. That's wonderful if you think I'm full of hot air, because that means you are listening and you're understanding what is important to you, and you're applying what you're hearing to what's important to you, and you're able to create your own image that makes the impact you want to make. And that's just wonderful. Boy, howdy, we're at an hour and a half. Thank you so much for listening and staying in. I love it. I really appreciate you. And I'm going to leave you with a dose of inspiration and then also a quote, as I often do. So the dose of inspiration comes from Psalm 92:12, which says, "But the godly will flourish like palm trees and grow strong like the cedars of Lebanon." You knew I had to pull something out like that, right? Talking about Lebanon, whether it's King Solomon and his cedars of Lebanon that he, pulled in for his temple, whether it's David here talking about the cedars of Lebanon, but the godly will flourish like palm trees. Absolutely. Be godly, be inspired, be influenced in those fashions. Absolutely. And they will grow strong like the cedars of Lebanon. When I was there at Batera Gorge, they were telling me, "Oh, you should go see the cedars forest. It's only another 5 kilometers up the road." It's like, I would love to, but I'm with this group. So again, maybe sometime in the future I can get back to Lebanon. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But, oh, wow, that would just be amazing. All right. And then Mark Twain, he actually went through the Holy Land in the experience, the trip he had for Innocents Abroad when he wrote that book. Now, this doesn't necessarily come from that. I don't know exactly where this comes from, but I loved this quote, Mark Twain. "Loyalty to the nation at all time, loyalty to the government when it deserves it." Absolutely. That I don't want to necessarily get all political on you, but yes, loyalty to the government when it deserves it. I'm definitely I want to say loyal to my country, loyal to my nation, loyal to my people, as it were. But the government, either side of the aisle, can absolutely 3 billion% screw things up just by, I don't know, not thinking properly. I don't know what the case is, but when it deserves it, you bet. All right. You can find me on YouTube. Just search for me, Brent Bergherm Photo. You can find me on Instagram. Just search my name, Brent Bergherm. And if you look me up on my page on Facebook, I'm also going to be trying to get a little more active on my page itself on Facebook. So Brent Bergherm Photo there on Facebook as well. So you can take a look at that. I will put those 3 links in the show notes here in your app, and they will all be there at the tail end that you'll be able to link right to it and either follow that page on Facebook, follow the Instagram account there, subscribe there on YouTube, and I've got a YouTube video coming out. I've already recorded on doing some photography here on the farm, and I don't want to spoil it, but I got some images I'm pretty proud of, and especially one of some dill. I think I've already put that out in the Facebook group already, and so you could take a look at that in the Facebook group and take a look at that dill image, dill dreaming. And I had a lot of fun getting out there, making some great pictures. Okay, that's it. We're at the end. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time. Until then, happy shooting.